As a child, Kelly was nothing if not relentless. When Kelly was around 11, our mom borrowed $10 from Kelly. Actually, Kelly demanded something, and Mom felt that if she really wanted it, Kelly should pay for it herself. This was a misguided attempt at fiscal responsibility. Well, Kelly got whatever it was she wanted, and all was right in her world again. Until, about a month later, Kelly is demanding her $10 back. Mom and Grandma try to explain that Kelly spent her own money. There was no loan, that Kelly received an allowance weekly to pay for any extra things she wanted, and our mom was not going to be paying her back. Kelly threw such a tantrum. I'm sure she could be heard blocks away. This didn't stop until Mom gave in and gave Kelly $10. Huge mistake. Remember, Kelly gets an allowance every week. I think it was $5, because that's how much my allowance was. Except I did the dishes 4 nights a week and helped Grandma with laundry. I don't know what Kelly's responsibilities were, just that I'm sure she rarely did them. Also, just to be fair, our older brother Kyle mowed the lawn, raked leaves, shoveled snow, etc. Now, back to the story. For years, I mean several times a year, Kelly would demand her $10 loan be repaid. It got to the point that we kept track of it on the kitchen calendar. Whenever Kelly would demand her money, my mom would show her that she had been paid back multiple times, at which Kelly would scoff and tell her, "No, you never paid me. You just wrote that on the calendar but never gave me any money." After that, Mom made Kelly initial the date and had Grandma also initial as a witness. The aftermath. In 1 year, Kelly's loan had been repaid 7 times. And until Kyle and I threatened to beat the snot out of her if she ever asked again. The last time that I knew she demanded her $10, Kelly was 15. She had been paid back over 15 times. Kelly, the loan shark. How did your sister end up like this? OP's mom gave in. I understand why she would do it, but that's how this behavior is reinforced and repeated. The seeds for the behavior were already there, and that's hard to track back to a source. But you have to never water them. Christmas time, the happiest time of the year. Not this year, and not for Kelly. The backstory. Our mother passed in December a few years before this story takes place. Every holiday season, Kelly would cry at work, cry to all her friends, cry to strangers, telling them, "The holidays are so hard since my family is gone. I don't know what I will do." And sometimes, "Christmas is so hard when you've been orphaned." Yep, she told her boss that. He told my husband. They're friends. Jeesh. Some years, Kelly would go on a bender, and no one would hear from her from around the 18th until about the 30th of December. No call, no show to work. Kelly always seemed to find a new job in January. The story. This year, Kelly went all out in her crazy. She was picked up for driving under the influence. The officials didn't care that she was sad because she was an orphan and threw her in lockup. Kelly knew better than to call me and ask for bail. Seriously, hard rule in my house. I don't pay bail. I even told my kids that at a very young age. So Kelly calls another friend to beg to bail her out for Christmas. This friend obviously didn't know Kelly's history and starts calling all Kelly's friends and relatives, asking everyone to pull enough money to pay Kelly's bail and get her some nice gifts. Kelly's friend calls me and tells me that since I'm Kelly's sister and only living family member, I should obviously contribute the most money. I don't react in anger. Instead, I ask, how much is her bail? How many people have you called? How much have you collected? Kelly's friend is obviously thinking that I will pay the remainder of their goal. She tells me her bail is X amount. I've called everyone I can think of to help poor Kelly, but I've only been able to get $25, her own donation. I tell her in my mom voice, "You're very sweet to try to help Kelly, but Kelly does this kind of thing almost every year. Kelly says every Christmas that she might as well K herself, so jail is the safest place for her right now." Kelly's friend says, "Wait, you're not going to give me X dollars? What kind of sister are you?" I tell her, I am a sister who is tired of Kelly's crap, and I have my own family to worry about. And why do you think Kelly called you and not me? That's because she knows I do not pay bail. The aftermath. Kelly's friend did eventually scrape together Kelly's bail and had Kelly come stay with her and her family for the holidays. Kelly stole from this girl's family. She took prescription D, cash, and some jewelry and electronics. Kelly's friend called me to apologize after the new year. The friend's family never pressed charges. They felt sorry for Kelly for getting herself arrested. Wow, good for you though. It's wise not to pay her bail. You'd be doing it for the rest of her life. Like you said, you have your own family. Unfortunately, people like Kelly never grow up. Our brother, Kyle, died almost 5 years after Mom in a car accident. He left behind a wife, who he adored, and 3 small children, and a 16-year-old son, Henry, from a previous alliance. Kyle had full custody of Henry, and Henry's birth mother had almost no contact with him until he was 20. Kyle and his family moved to be near Dad in Kentucky about 6 months before he died. Dad calls me in the morning of the accident and asks me to once again start calling everyone to let them know about Kyle. This time, however, I only had to call to give the bad news. I was not involved at all in the arrangements. I call all the relatives, but leave our sister Kelly for my last call. I call Kelly's work and ask her to call me when she gets home. She starts making herself hyperventilate and breathlessly cries, "Why? What's wrong?" I ask her where she is in the restaurant, Pizza Hut. She tells me she's out front, so I tell her to place me on hold and pick up in the office. Now she's making herself frantic. "No, just tell me what's wrong." She has no idea if anything is even wrong. For all she knew, I was calling to tell her I had won the lottery. So I tell her, remember, she is in Pizza Hut at lunchtime. She screams, "Oh my God, no!" I believe she either drops the phone or throws it. But a few seconds later, someone is on the line, patron, asking me what just happened. I pretend that I'm a police officer and very formally tell the patron that her brother has died. I ask if she needs medical assistance. He says, "No, I don't think so. I mean, she's on the floor and people are trying to help her." And I thank him and hang up. My husband is almost in hysterics laughing at my impersonation, which was awful. 2 days later, Dad and Kyle's family arrive at my house. We don't have room for anyone. We live in a 2-bed, 1-bath bungalow. So Kyle's family stays with his wife's family, and Dad stays with friends. Before they leave, I fill them in on who I was able to contact and ask if they needed anything else from me. I also gave them a heads up about Kelly. Side note, Kelly had always disliked Kyle because he was the oldest and a boy. The day of the funeral. Lots of people. Kyle had tons of friends, and they all came. I believe he had 8 pallbearers. During the visitation viewing, Kelly hung all over Kyle's friends, crying, needing help to sit down, getting her water, etc. They all hated her. They heard stories from Kyle too. At one point, I was talking to one of Kyle's friends who was crying. I reached out to hug him, and like a frickin' predator, Kelly swoops in and starts crying on his shoulder. He just looked at me and rolled his eyes. During the service, Kelly sat in front of his wife and children. This raised quite a few eyebrows. At least she provided some much-needed comic relief that day, even if she didn't know it. The aftermath. Well, true to form, Kelly calls and asks me how much she should expect from Kyle's estate. Estate? What estate, I ask her. Kyle was a sous chef at a very nice hotel restaurant, but that they had just moved. He didn't have any life insurance. His poor wife is left with 3 small children and lots of debt. Oldest son asked to move in with Grandpa to finish high school. She informs me that she needs something, that because of me, she may lose her job. She's referring to my call, but also, she took almost 4 weeks off work for bereavement. Inheritance denied. Edit. Kyle was my older brother. I'm Katie, the middle child, and Kelly is our younger sister. Kyle's children, Henry, the oldest, was 16 at the time of this story. His mother lost custody of him when he was 3, and not in the picture. Damien is second son, and 7. Dasha is Kyle's only girl and was 4, and Dominic, youngest son, was 3. Hope this helps keep the characters straight. Well, true to form, Kelly calls and asks me how much she should expect from Kyle's estate. Well, seeing how he had a wife, which precedes any siblings or other relatives, unless he specifically left a will stating she got anything, she gets nothing. And I highly doubt there will be a will naming this B as a beneficiary. Kelly never wanted anyone to be mad or angry with her, with the exception of her immediate family. It took a while to see her pattern of behavior, but here's what was noticed. Kelly pisses off her best friend by getting really drunk at her party and starts harassing the guests. Kelly drives her car off the road into a cornfield. Her car just needed towing out of the field, and Kelly had some bumps and bruises. You can't be mad at me. Kelly doesn't show up for her scheduled workday, and manager is threatening to write her up or fire her. Kelly cuts herself while prepping veggies and has to go to the hospital for stitches. You can't be mad at me. Judy is furious because Kelly isn't paying her share of the rent. Kelly gets into a bicycle accident and has to go to the hospital. Accident was Kelly's fault. Kelly has bruised ribs. You can't be mad at me. Julie is really mad when Kelly leaves their apartment looking like a hurricane swept through during the day. Kelly drives under the influence and hits a tree. Ambulance ride, tickets issued, court dates set. Kelly not severely injured, but pretty banged up. You can't be mad at me. I am taking Grandma out to lunch and to run any errands she needs done. Kelly has invited herself along. Kelly doesn't like where Grandma and I have decided to eat and throws a temper tantrum in my car. I tell her, too bad, this is where Grandma wants to go. If you don't like it, get out and walk home. Kelly doubles down. I will, and then you'll be sorry if anything happens to me. Grandma says, make up your mind, Kelly. The light will be green soon. And Kelly jumps out of the car in a very busy intersection over 10 miles from home. Kelly walks all the way home, as I refuse to play her game. Kelly had blisters on her feet and a pretty righteous sunburn. But you can't be mad at me. Wrong, Kelly. I'm just done playing your games. I take it Kelly never learned. This story requires a bit of background about my family and my life, because the entitled person starring in this story happens to be my very own father. I will say he wasn't a horrible man, and my childhood was actually a pretty good one. But his personality changed a lot when I was around 10, and he had a major surgery. I found out when I was much older that he began cheating on my mother after this time, and by the time my brother and I were in high school, he was quick to temper, did some stupidly reckless things, and was heavily abusing pills. So it was only natural my parents divorced. My mother got custody of my brother and I, and we moved across the country from my father, who stayed there by his family and job as a police officer. It only took him 1 year to claim he missed us, my brother and I. He came to visit us and made all kinds of ridiculous promises. If we lived with him, we'd have so much more fun. We could do whatever we wanted, eat what we want, skip school when we want. School was definitely something we both struggled with. Now, I could see something was wrong from the start, even if I really didn't understand what. But my brother, he and Mom had been butting heads often, and he jumped at the chance to go. Mom let him. She wasn't going to force him to stay with her. She really regrets it now. Dad got exactly what he wanted, which was a nice big check for Mom every month. He hadn't been paying any child support to Mom because she knew he didn't make much. So with my brother there, she wanted to take care of him, but the money definitely didn't go where it should have. My dad's girlfriends, electronics, pills, they hardly ever had proper food and necessities, and they lost the house within the year and had to move in with my grandparents, Dad's mother, there. My brother and Dad were barely on speaking terms by then. My brother had gotten into D and alcohol thanks to my dad, fought a lot at and outside school, and really wasn't doing well. The situation lasted over a year until something terrible happened. We got the call. That call absolutely everyone who has a family member in law enforcement dreads. It was so many years ago now, but I can still remember the terror I felt at it. My dad had been sheriff's deputy for years, but he'd never really gotten hurt. He did fairly safe patrols and the kind of small-town guard work. But this day, during a traffic stop, someone shot him 3 times in the chest, luckily nailing him in the bulletproof vest, but it still did damage thanks to it being from very close range, bad bruising and some broken ribs. He got a call for help out on his radio before he passed out and was found and rushed to the hospital. He claimed he'd been drive-by shot by some Latino men. It was unbelievable from the start, honestly. He lived in a very small town. Things like that just don't really happen. But by then it was well known my brother really hated my dad, and he was a problem kid. So the other cops, my dad's friends, thought he might be lying to cover up that it was my brother who shot him. State troopers were brought in to investigate one way or another. Over the next month, money was raised by the community and church to cover my dad's hospital bills and recovery, and he was donated all kind of food and necessities every week to take care of him all the way up to Christmas, where my dad and brother drove up to spend it with us. It was bad. My dad showed up on our door with a shotgun in hand, and he was acting so incredibly cagey. The shotgun stayed with him at all times, when he slept, when he went to the bathroom, and the many times he went out to drive around. Cue most unsettling 2 days ever. All three of us avoided him, but finally, Mom got the truth out of him. He was wanted for questioning by the state troopers, and he was running. Seems they'd finally worked out what he'd done. He had the bright idea that he could make some quick cash if he was injured on the job, so he decided to fake a police shooting by shooting himself point blank 3 times in the chest. Oh, he knew he'd be fine. He put on a vest. Nothing could have possibly gone horrifically wrong. Best of all, he knew that he couldn't use his own gun. That would be too obvious. So he stole my brother's gun, used it to shoot himself, and threw it into the engine back of the cruiser to hide it. It took them a while to find it, but if he had died, it's very likely my brother would have been paying the price. We were horrified. My brother was pissed. Christmas was ruined. We decided to go ahead and have it that night. About 4 days early anyway, so that my dad could turn himself in afterwards peacefully, without the shotgun. I asked him later what it was for. He'd been trying to work up to K himself on those drives he took. Surprisingly, he got off on the charges with a strict parole. But we didn't see him very often after that, and obviously my brother came back to live with us. A few years later, well, a DUI and belligerence at a Sonic is what finally sent him to jail. Wow, just wow. I hope you never have to experience your dad's entitledness like that again.